Finally. All right. So welcome back, everybody. Let's resume where we left off in terms of moving on from reflectively smarter. So we understand that a little bit. So spiritually smarter being so when we speak about being spiritually smarter, we're not talking about anything religious, but we're talking about being aware of the values and beliefs that we hold to, especially when things get rough. And that's actually something that a lot of times the only time you're aware of your true values is when things go wrong. Um, because it's easy when things are what's the word I want to use? When things are going well, for us to just hold to values and principles when things are nice and smooth. But when things go bad, which is what it talks about here in terms of rough or white waters, that's when you can actually find out what is your true character like. So that is something that you might want to pay attention to. So spiritually smarter is that we need to understand what are our core beliefs and our core principles that we hold to, and make sure that we are aware of what those values and principles are. Because a lot of times, sometimes we aren't aware of what they are. So, um, as I said, and that usually reveals itself when you are in rough waters as opposed to when you are in smooth sailing conditions. Because when things going good, things we're not under stress, but when you are under stress, then you could see what your true behavior is like. So that's something you want to pay attention to. Now, we talked about paradigms before, and paradigms are defined as patterns or ways of looking at things. So it's basically how we get accustomed to doing things. There's a question here, but we'll leave that for you guys to respond to in your reflections and stuff. What is your current leadership paradigm? A lot of people believe current paradigms of leadership is something that you arrive at leadership positions due to your length of time that you've been at doing things, and or leadership is not your business, that kind of stuff. That is them people thing. Those are the kind of paradigms we might hold. What we are talking about is changing paradigms. So when we change paradigms, it's important that we pay attention to how those changes are or what's causing those changes, and what changes are actually taking place. So you all might remember this word paradigm being mispronounced by a number of people, but you could probably see why it's pronounced sometimes as paradigm. All right. So part of the problem of understanding when paradigm shifting takes place is understanding when it needs to happen. So the paradigm shifts of leadership took place a while back. And one of the things I like let's look at our situations now. We made paradigm shifts in the way in which we teach classes now. And that paradigm was forced on us because of changing circumstances of face-to-face classes and the inherent risks during a pandemic. Now, what has happened now is that it has led to a situation where the college is actually a little more comfortable delivering their classes on an online environment than actually spending the money on maintaining buildings and facilities to teach classes in a live face-to-face session. And it is going to be a challenge getting back into the classroom, because the richness of the experience in the online environment and the face-to-face environment are comparable. But a lot of you all may not like it. Now, there's something I wanted to ask about. I mean, because I was one who had to make a swift change, because although I did do e-classes and I did blended classes before, doing fully online classes was something that I didn't see as being um, feasible, especially with some of the content I was dealing with. So this class in particular was going to be problematic. But when I made this shift, I found that it allowed for a degree of comfort from the student's perspective that was not available in the previous setup, where you were standing in front of people and you were delivering and presenting, where people felt uncomfortable. How do you all feel about the shift that was made by the college to move to online environments? Talk to me about that.
Personally, this is Hakime. I kind of hate it because as a student, one of my strong points is doing oral presentations. And usually, when lecturers ask which order we would like to go in, I usually, for selfish reasons, like to go first because I think I do it so well that I like to set the mood, to kind of a little intimidate and make the people coming after me a little shaky and nervous. Um, so I usually do that to, express myself. That's usually where I get the bulk of my marks. So
Mhm.
it's really a little more difficult for me personally with the shift online, but only in that sense.
Well, I think you can still do the same thing. You just need to make sure that you look at how you're projecting yourself in terms of your kind of camera coverage and stuff like that. But it's, I guess, the limitation that we're talking about here would be what your personal income can, organize for you in terms of cameras and lighting and that kind of stuff if you're looking for the very best situation. All right. So besides that, anybody else has an opinion that they would like to share on that shift?
I mean, I do feel a lot more comfortable speaking and interacting with students in class, but I feel like one of the greater benefits for online is the fact that we take out that transit time. I don't have to like travel to make my way to school and then make my way from school to home afterwards.
Mhm.
So I think that's like a great benefit to the online.
All right. What about the asynchronous aspect of classes? Meaning that you don't actually have to be in a class at a specific time, as opposed to this type of class, which is synchronous, where we have a specific time to meet online. What? Did, how many of you all appreciate the that option? Because some of
I
my classes, I have more of that synchronous, and in other classes, I have less synchronous sessions.
I
So for
actually
me, I enjoy the flexibility.
Hmm. All right.
I actually kind of prefer the coming into school because I think it teaches us like, all right, yeah, but that yeah, so it's like time management to a certain extent.
Hmm.
Yes, yes, you still have to find your way home, right, to get to class, but it how to put it, boy, say boy. I think it making things easier for people sometimes, right? Does actually make them slack off a little more,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
you know?
That could happen.
In
That.
class has a lot less distraction than being home and the class is going on and the dog is barking and somebody's coming in the door and then you're like, what, looking all over the place. Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
So
You can't do that in class.
right, and
I think it's
the situation there calls for a lot more discipline.
Being at
I
home.
think
Being at home,
Yes,
right?
it does go for a lot more discipline. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's necessary based on the times that we're in now. And just like everything else, there are challenges, but it's necessary. At least if it is, you want to make progress.
Good. So that's a good example of a paradigm shift that took place that we had to adjust to very, very quickly. And some people like it, some people don't, some people struggle with it. But at the end of the day, we did have to make the shift for our own benefits. Some people unfortunately got lost along the way. But we'll
Yes,
see how
like me.
we'll see how we bring them back in, like you. Okay.
Thanks, SM.
All right, so this is a paradigm shift here. Leadership is not something a leader possesses so much as a process involving followership. Now, that's a paradigm shift because most times when people think about leaders, they think about or leadership, they think about the leader. But what a lot of people don't think about is the followers, because you can't be a leader if you have no followers. We think about it. All right. And what is followership? Followership is really leadership in action among people. Now, this is what the model is telling us, and we'll try to explain to us about followership. So, there are different types of follower types, and you all might be familiar with this. Think about this from the position of people in your group or your various groups that you've dealt with. So, what we're looking at here, and this is taken straight out of the textbook. I just did a cut and paste from it. On the x-axis, we're looking at, sorry, the y-axis, we're looking at relationship initiative from high to low. And on the x-axis, we're looking at performance initiatives from high to low. Turn this on. Right? From low to high, sorry. So somebody who has high relationship initiatives, that is the ability to develop relationships on their own, and high performance initiatives, that is that they do a lot of work by themselves and so on. That person is classified as a follower type, that is a partner. The opposite of that, somebody who has low relationship initiative, which means they're not going to do much about developing relationships with other people in the group without other people prompting them to do so. And similarly, they're not going to do a lot of things unless they are told to do so, is a subordinate. Now, preferably, most people like partners, correct? Subordinates become difficult to manage, especially in small group situations. Now, you also have, as opposed to a partner, you have somebody who's a politician, which means they're really good with the relationship aspect of the organizational activities, but they're really poor at performance initiatives, which means they don't really do a lot of, they're good with the talk and the laugh and the socialization, but they're really bad at actually getting any work done. That's a politician. A contributor is the opposite to a politician, meaning that they're not very good with the relationship activities, the socialization aspects of dealing with the relationship building in the group, but they're really good with the getting the work done. That's a contributor. Now, where do you see yourself, first of all, in your groups that you participated in? You don't need to answer that question. You need to position yourself there. There are other models that develop more types of followers, and we'll look at that in a little bit. But if you start to categorize your people in your groups in this kind of situation, as a leader, it's important to understand what you can get from each of these individuals. Partners are probably the most challenging. Why? Because a partner can challenge the leader for leadership, because they are just as good, because hopefully the leader themselves is actually really good in this area here, or is similar in activity to the partner. So partners have a tendency to challenge other leaders in the organization. Politicians have a role. They can be put in charge of, let's say, like in our class here, we put people in charge to help develop the chat group and manage what's going on with the chats and that kind of stuff, because they're really good with and communicating with each other. So that's like a communications officer. And they're really good with that, but they're not so good on doing the actual grunt work that's necessary for your assignment. So the contributor is the person who is better for doing that. So you could probably give them that type of work to do, where they don't have to focus their energies on developing on relationships. So you understand that this person is sort of like your workhorse in an organization. The subordinate is somebody that you're not going to give a lot of leeway to, because you're going to have to always be on them to say, okay, you need to do this, either on this side, relationship building, or on this side in terms of getting something done. So this person requires a lot more effort to manage. Contributors just need to be pointed into getting certain work done, but they have to be assisted in developing relationships. Meaning like, remember when you're finished doing the work, to email it to this one and send it to that one, that kind of stuff. Politicians, on the other hand, you have to be watching to make sure that you manage them so that they don't challenge you beyond what and cause problems in the organization. Politicians, on the other hand, you have to be careful that they do what they do, but also lend their assistance to. So, like you might get a politician to assist contributors who are stronger at the work, the research, and whatnot that has to get done, but are poor on the communication. So you actually give them that function to work with the contributors for that. Partners might have to work with subordinates because they can delegate activities and responsibilities. You're following what this follower type model is looking at. Yes? Do
Yes,
you
sir.
Yes,
right?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you see yourself in the four options?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right.
Mm,
What
yes,
about
sir.
these 7 types? This is a different model. This is the Bridget Hyacin 2014 model. So you have loyalists, right? Sycophants, critics, opportunists, spectators, traitors, and realists. So that's a different set of followers. So there are distinctions between the two. What's a traitor? Let's deal with that. What do you think a traitor is?
That Judas, sir, that Judas.
Judas, right? Somebody who is ready and willing to give up the leader and their plans, yes, to the opposition, as opposed to a loyalist who's what?
Unwilling to
Die-hard,
give
follow you no matter what.
loyalty.
Right. So like a die-hard, ride or die kind of person that you'll think about. Yes, they'll give their last drop of blood to make sure that the leader and the organization moves forward. Right. Okay. So what is a realist and an opportunist?
A realist would be a good follower, but also will call you out when you do bad.
Right. So they would be, regardless of how a leader may present themselves, the realist will always bring the leader back to reality. As opposed to an opportunist. What's an opportunist?
Someone who would
Just there for a good opportunity to gain.
Mm-hmm. They're there because they
No,
currently.
well, I feel
they
like
only-
the opportunist is the opposite of the.
Think of bandwagonists. Opportunists are like bandwagonists.
Because this
So they just stay because you know this.
because the side
No,
winning right
they're
now,
there
we
because
will support them.
correct. So we dare, yeah, and I could benefit a little bit from it, as opposed to what a sycophant. That's a dangerous one, a sycophant.
They're only there because they can get something from you.
Anybody?
More dangerous than the traitor, sir.
They're there primarily because there's something that they want to get out of it. They're going to siphon out what they want, and then they're going to walk
Like
away.
a
with
parasite.
Spectators. Parasite. Very good. And a spectator. They don't do anything. They just there
They
for.
don't participate, they're just there for
Gape.
Basically, they're there to gape. They're there for the bear. What about a critic?
Someone who
Self-explanatory.
doesn't contribute, but
They're there, but everything they have to say is, as opposed to a realist will tell you what is and what's good,
They
what's
always
bad,
find
what's
a fault in somebody.
critic. Very good. Critics always look for what's wrong, what's at fault, what is not going to be liked, and therefore they're not useful. Whereas a realist might be useful to help leaders and organizations to move and grow. Critics have rules, but they will always find fault with everything, regardless of what is there. Making sense so far? Follower responsibilities.
Yes,
So if you are, and we all have to be followers at some point in time, because we all aren't leaders at all points in time. These are the responsibilities of followers. Offer support to leaders. Well, that makes sense. Because we're there to work with our leadership to make sure that we arrive at the objectives of the leadership and the organization. Take initiative, meaning we don't wait to be told to do something, we do it just because we know it has to be done, we can see something has to be done, or we can anticipate something has to be done. We go ahead and we do it without having to be asked. Play counselor and coaching roles. Now, counselor and coaching roles to both other followers as well as the leader. That's something that followers need to do. They provide an opportunity for when a leader needs somebody to talk to be able to work things out, help them in the areas that may be weak and therefore require some counseling and some assistance, both to the followers, other followers, and the leaders themselves. Raise issues and concerns when necessary. Now, this is one that a lot of leaders don't like. Um, Good followers will deal with issues if they come up when necessary, even if it means calling out the leader on something. All right. Seek and encourage honest feedback. That comes together with raising the issues, because what you're looking for is you want to get real feedback, not placations, but you want to get feedback that says, right, we're going well here, or no, we're not. You don't want people just telling you, yeah, man, I'm good. And what they really mean is that, this needs to be better.
So
You're
like
looking for
constructive
constructive.
criticism.
Yeah, like constructive, yeah, criticism. Clarify your role and expectation. That's important. As a follower, if you're not clear on what you're supposed to be doing and what is expected of you, it's all like you're in a class and you're not sure what you're supposed to do, and how you're supposed to move through the course and get things done. Um, if you're unclear about that, there's a great likelihood that you can't function appropriately or effectively within that organization or in that classroom. Show appreciation. Well, a lot of followers need to understand that leaders require some degree of appreciation. We do that sometimes, and we also need to show appreciation to other followers when things go right or wrong, to try and help to build a sense of togetherness in the organization, to be able to encourage movement forward. Keeping the leader informed. That means you're not you're not carrying news, but what you're doing is you're keeping leaders updated on progress in what's happening. Not not irrelevant stuff, but important stuff that is required. Not gossip. That's what that is. All right, and then of course, resisting inappropriate influences of leaders. Now that is a tricky one, because a lot that means challenging a leader who's behaving unethically, and that can cause problems. Because I don't know if any of you all have ever come across a situation where you've had somebody in a leadership role around you who's doing something and you have to bring them up on it. It's difficult to do, because as a follower in organizations in particular, especially business organizations, it's similar to whistleblowing, and that can be problematic because you can find yourself in problems. But hey, we're not talking about whistleblower, because that's going to a third party and saying, but you're going to talk to the leader. Hey, you see this thing you're doing here? So like you're going to a teacher that you like and you're telling them, sir, the way you behave with certain students is not appropriate. Um, Sorry? No, somebody's mic is just open, I guess. Right? You all understanding that concept?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now that's a lot of leaders don't like those responsibilities, but that is, as a follower, those are the things we need to do. All right, and to be able to do that, these are the skills and competencies we need to have. We need to know how to display loyalty. So, for example, you'd see me displaying my loyalty to my organization by showing it physically, displaying loyalty by doing things like defending the organization, speaking well of it in public and stuff like that, and trying to be able to say positive things about things. Those are things that followers ought to do for organizations and leaders that they're working with. Function well in change oriented environments. So you need to be able to understand that situations are not going to be the same, and therefore all you need to be able to function well in change environments. Consider, for example, now along the way we've lost some lecturers who simply could not get into the online environment. We still have lecturers still challenged, highly challenged by it, and they're having problems with the change over into the online environment. Um, and they we try to help. We did training, and we've done a lot of things to be able to get people to start to make the switch. But if your mindset is one where you are close to change, then you're not going to be able to manage or navigate the change because your change orientation is negative. Function well on teams, that's another one. You have to be able to work well on teams effectively and efficiently. Think independently and critically. Now, we spoke about this. This means we're not, although we are follower, we're not calling them sheep. We don't want people just blindly following what a leader says. And a lot of leaders don't like that about followers in organizations. They don't want them thinking critically and independently. They want them to blindly follow, and that's a problem. All right. Considers integrity of paramount importance. That is coming back to ethical values and standards, and thinks and believes that that is of critical value in any organization or among leadership and followers as well. All right. So if those are the things that we're talking about, those are roles, responsibilities, and our as followers, our competencies. Is followers the best term to use to describe such people? What would you suggest that we use instead of followers? Any suggestion?
Associates.
That's actually a good one. In a lot of organizations, instead of using the term follower or subordinate, they use associate. But then some people, although they change the term because they're trying to elevate your thinking, they don't behave that way. They have some organizations that use the terms simply because it sounds better, but they don't behave that way. They don't encourage that behavior. So there can be a disconnect, because I've seen that strategy utilized in some organizations. But if the organization's leadership doesn't respect followers when they question what's going on, and it can backfire trying to use this because it's hard to do. Leaders have to be willing to give in to followers when they've been brought up. And again, leadership is not about you alone making decisions to move something forward, but you to collectively working with others to get the best. This is another followership model. So on the X and Y axis, we're looking at the type of thinking, critical thinking. So on the positive end, or the Y axis, we have independent and critical thinking. On the negative part, we have dependent and uncritical thinking. Here we're talking about the degree of behavior. You're talking about active versus passive. So if you look at the term here, sheep are people who fall into the category of having very dependent and uncritical thinking and very passive in their activities. So the vast majority of political followers tend to fall in this category because they either believe they have very little power, all right, or capacity to act, and because they're unable or unwilling to think critically, they are highly dependent on the leadership. So you find that these sets of people here, this kind of sheep is problematic. As opposed to the sheep, you have the yes people. Again, they're highly active, but they're only going to be active based upon uncritical thinking and dependent only on the direction of the leadership. So those yes people, those are the people who are going to always, whatever the leaders say, we're doing that. And we had to get this done and that done, and they're highly active and all in the organization, but they're only going to act based upon the instructions of what the leadership says. Now, effective followers, on the other hand, are those who have high levels of action and are capable of independent critical thinking. So they're difficult to manage. Why they're difficult to manage? Because they are going to be the ones who will challenge leadership because they're independent and critical thinking. And because they are active, they can negatively impact upon a leader or an organization if they believe that they are being ignored. And then, of course, you have alienated followers. These are people who have very little capacity to act, but they are capable of thinking critically and independently, but they believe they can't do anything, so they are alienated. So they're there, but they're not doing anything, but they're very critical of what's going on. And of course, you have survivors. You have survivors who kind of fall in the center of the whole model there. Quite interesting, because in different organizational structures or different times in our life, we may find ourselves moving through these areas. It's not that we always fall into one or the other. Where might you find yourself in this model? Anybody? Where would you think you'd like to have yourself? Not an effective follower? I know in some organizations, I feel very alienated.
I mean, somewhere between yes, people and effective followers.
Yes, people. So for some, yeah, I guess you could fall out because are you willing to think critically, or are you just dependent on what the leadership tells you? That's a dangerous thing, though. You have to watch that thinking axis. We should all be capable of independent critical thinking, and we shouldn't be dependent on what the leadership says, because we need to be. I think I'd prefer to be an alienated follower than a yes person.
Than a yes person.
Yeah, because that means I'm not engaging my critical thinking skills at all, and I'm just totally taking what the leadership says, and I'm not. I mean, let's look at something here like the vaccination issue and these free zones and whatnot that they're talking about now. I know a lot of people think they're thinking critically, but a lot of people are being led by other types of activities because they're not really looking at the facts of the matter. They're just being guided by the propaganda surrounding a lot of things. I mean, recently I heard at a funeral, a pastor is telling people not to go and take vaccinations because what's the term they use for it? God something, and I don't want to get in and say anything wrong about anybody's religion, but the something about God's power is the only power and that kind of stuff. And I'm telling myself, I said, yeah, and then there's a part of the Bible that says, that God helps those who help themselves, kind of thing. So I was thinking about, the number of different arguments that could come up against that. But I'm pretty certain that nobody's going to get up in church and tell a pastor that. You understand? I don't know.
Yeah, that he not really making sense.
Yeah, that some of the things that people are saying not making sense. But would you get up and say anything about it? That's the alienated follower. You feel as if you have no power, but you're thinking individually and critically. You're acting differently, but you feel as if you have no say. And a lot of our society actually kind of falls into this area, especially when it comes to the political situation that we find ourselves in, because we have very few avenues to act to be able to get certain things done. So that's something to think about in terms of where you feel you are in terms of the political leadership of the country. All right, leadership style. So we talked about the various leadership situations requiring different types of leadership styles. So when we talk about the styles, we're talking about the classic styles or the classical, which involves either the laissez-faire um, style, the autocratic, or the participative, or what we call the Y theory, X theory versus Y theory. So those are the classical views of leadership. The laissez-faire means you leave it alone, how it hang and swing, things will sort itself out. Autocratic means whatever I say goes. Participative means that your leader is always going to be including everybody to try and make decisions that would reflect upon the thinking and the skills of everybody in the organization. That's one of a set of classical leadership models. Then you have situational models, which is basically a model that of leadership that is based upon the situation that you find yourself working in. Emergent is a type of leadership style that means somebody kind of comes through an organization and emerges as a leader. So they sort of like come from the ranks. Transactional is leadership styles that uses at the base of it transactions. So we kind of use transactional in with children. You know, if you do this, you'll get that. So if you do your homework, you'll get dessert or you'll get some chocolate or something like that. That's kind of transactional. In the business place, if you do this, you'll get a bonus. If you do this, you get paid. If you do this, you'll keep your job. Kind of things like that. Transactional. Transformational is a type of leadership that tries to work with individuals to be able to work together to transform organizations. So that requires a different type of skill sets to get done. And of course, the visionary style is one where a leader has a vision and sells that vision to other people. Problems with visionary leaders is that it might be difficult for them to deal with the micro management elements to get the vision. So they're like a big picture person. But visionary and transformational tend to intersect with each other. But at the end of the day, what the model is saying is that these are the different styles that are available, and managers and leaders are required to be able to draw from any set that is required that they can use to get the objectives and to move organizations along. So in essence, no leader should really stick to a style of leadership. They should look at these as tools that they have available to utilize given the circumstances they find themselves in. That makes sense?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
It's just that some people tend to fall into patterns of behavior and tend to behave in particular manners. But we will, in later chapters, we will look at this in more detail. So who's the leader? And going back to the model or the definition we had before, a leader is any person who's actively engaged with others to accomplish change. That is coinciding with the definition of what we had before. Purpose of the leader: motivate employees, attain organizational goals, ensure rules are adhered to, provide continuity and momentum. That means we move it from point to point and giddy up, let's go. Embrace and foster change, work for the common good, act socially responsible manner, encourage and behave with, engage in civic engagement, and engage in civic responsibility. So I think we went on to talk about those a little more. Social responsibility is a personal commitment to the well-being of our people, our world, and our society, public thing. That is something. Social being socially responsible means we are putting the well-being of our society before our personal interests. So, and it's a commitment to that social responsibility. That's something that a lot of us have challenges with. But moving fast, civic engagement refers to having a sense of responsibility for the communities that we operate in, or working environment, or social, or family, or community, or if you belong to clubs and stuff. Any of you all belong to clubs, by the way? You may not be active in the club anymore, but any of you all active in any sort of church groups or work-related groups, or you're some sort of youth group or something along those lines, community group?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about in terms of civic engagement. Engaging in activities that works for the good of the civil society around you, and not only doing things that are for your purpose or your family's purpose only. So these are some of the activities that we can look at for civic engagement, civic action, civic commitment. So you have participation activities such as voluntary services to do things for your community, committing yourself to making contributions to societies. So like, putting money in a fund or putting time into activities that, like cleaning up the environment and stuff like that. Civic skills, sort of like voting and stuff like that. Taking part in discussions that move ideas forward and help to broaden and deepen our democracy. Social cohesion, which means we develop a sense of reciprocity, trust, and bonding with others. So when I do something, I'm not doing it only for me, but I'm doing it for everybody. So they do something and I do something. So there's a sense of reciprocity, and I trust that when you do it, you're doing it with with the broad construct of everybody's going to benefit from this. So I trust that you're doing it, and then we engage with each other to be able to do it. So social cohesion, those are the kind of things that you want to get into. Civic responsibility, a sense of personal responsibility that you should feel to uphold your obligations as part of any community. So for example, you don't go and throw rubbish in your neighbor empty gap or yard.
Sir, but I'm the student.
Huh?
Them not upholding the civic responsibility then.
Yes. You don't you look after the front of your house, even though you might have CPEP come in there, you look at it, make sure it's not doing things that make life for people who have to utilize the area in front of your home as like your bush going over onto the road and blocking the vision of your neighbor when you're trying to look down the road to see if traffic coming so you could join the traffic on the road and that kind of stuff. Simple things like that. Or you don't heap up a set of smelly rubbish in front of your house or to the corner of your house and leave it there for everybody to smell and that kind of stuff. Or you have dogs and your dog's always jumping out and running around the village and ripping down people's garbage bin and that kind of stuff. You understand what I'm talking about? Civic responsibilities goes from simple little things like that. A simple thing like following the law. How many of you, when you're driving, observe the speed notification and the speed limit in your area?
Sometimes.
Or sometimes you're supposed to observe the speed limit all the time. What's the speed limit around your home? When you're driving in home by you? Do you know?
No, sir, I struggle. I did job drivers.
Huh? No, you have to
So I
understand.
think it's 40 or 60. I don't know.
Oh, no, okay. Is it a residential area?
Yes, sir.
All right. I think you ought to pay attention to find out what's going on there. Because it may not be 60. I definitely think it'll be 60.
So mine is 10
Right. Why is that?
because it may have children.
There you go. I mean, 10 kilometers an hour. Is that feasible though?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for the
Yeah.
area, yeah.
Yeah. And to help with that, what do communities do? Wouldn't they put up or install speed
Yeah,
bumps?
they have a sign at the gate.
There'll be signage, very good.
Mhm.
But they would also, kind of put hindrances in place to prevent people from speeding,
Like
by
speed bumps.
like speed bumps, right? Or they might install cameras to monitor what's going on, or speed traps, so that
Yeah,
you
that's
know
it.
what the speed. Those are things that happen because people are not taking up their civic responsibility. In residential and built-up areas, the speed limit in and around homes is between 15 to 10 kilometers an hour, because of the opportunity or the chance that children might run out onto the road, animals might run out onto the road, and you need to be able to stop your vehicle very quickly. Because trust me, I mean, you hit somebody at 20 kilometers an hour, especially a child, you might very well kill that child. All right. So those are things that leadership looks upon, or this model of leadership looks upon as being important to developing your leadership potential, and is one of the purposes of leadership. Because as a leader, you have to be able to exhibit all of these behaviors in all aspects of life. All right, kind of making sense? Little more. It's not hard and fast and other things. So these are some of the things we talk about here that a lot of us don't like. Jury duty. Anybody ever did jury duty? I know teachers are exempt, but I mean, other people, have you? Paying taxes. That's another one people don't like to do. Going to school and obeying the law. That makes sense? Providing community service, voting. We don't have this one, service in the military and displaying patriotism. Things like flying the flag and that kind of stuff. Properly, not just when we win a football game or something, then we fly flags, but displaying patriotism. Do you notice that can become a problem as well? If you look at certain societies where overdoing your patriotism can be negative in the organization or negative in a country. Remember, they're talking about some things are good and some things can become bad based upon behaviors. So things to think about. All right, so question: should a leader know everything? Well, the short answer is no. That is impossible. It will never happen. But if you accept the fact that a leader ought not to know everything, the leader must therefore be open to learning. And remember, all of us are smarter than one. So that if a leader, well, first off, followers can't expect that a leader knows everything. And therefore, if a leader lacks information, they must be open to learning that from other people in an organization who are not leaders. That makes sense? If you're not going to be open to learning, then there's no way that you can accept this question, because there are lots of people who are leaders and they are embarrassed when they say to you, or they will never admit to you that they don't know something. That's a Trini kind of thing. It's sort of like if somebody asks you for directions and you don't know where to go, do you tell them you don't know, or do you pretend that you know everything?
No, I come out and I say I don't know.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Trinities that
Yes,
don't know how to get directions.
yeah.
All right, guys. So you have to be open to this whole concept of learning and being in a learning environment. And this one here, this is important. In an environment and making mistakes and sharing knowledge. Making a mistake is not a bad thing. Not learning from your mistake is the negative thing. And sharing knowledge. There's some people who are kind of like, you still have them. Not sharing knowledge is withholding power. If I share my knowledge, then I'm going to give up power. Some people still perceive that, and that's something that you want to pay attention to as well. Well, this is the learning model. You all could go through this one on your own. I think in the recording that I did, I talked a bit about this model between focus, will, and capacity. And what actually is determined as the learning model, about in terms of what you can do is based upon the intersection of your focus, your will, and your capacity. What you end up being able to do. All right, so something for you all to be looking at. This is a different learning model. This is one with reflection, so experience, reflection, critical thinking, and then reconceptualization, and then try it again. And that's sort of like, if you think about a simple thing like learning how to do woodwork. So you kind of go and learn about it, you read up about it, that kind of stuff. You look at the theories, you look at what the books have to say, and then you do something with it. From the experience of doing something, you think about, reflect here on what you did, and kind of look at the piece that you've done, and kind of try to work out, well, is this good? Is this the way I wanted to do? That brings us to the critical inquiry, and therefore you reconceptualize what you've done, and then you try it again. So you keep on going through this cycle of application, experience, reflection, and conceptualization, and we keep on moving around like that. That is a lot. A lot of people might see this one in terms of practical work, practical experience. But if you apply this particular concept to most learning, then you start to realize that everything can be, especially the second model here, model 2, as opposed to this model here, existing theory to application. If you bring this into this, then you come back out to that, change the theory, and then come back down to application, and begin the whole process going back and forth again. All right, so the most effective organizations that exist outside there create learning environments. So one of the organizations that actually started really, really well is Google. The Google organization, in terms of setting up and positioning Google as this go-to place that we all go to find out things. Prior to Google, anybody knows what were the search engines, or you don't remember?
Bing and
Encyclopedia,
Yahoo,
dictionary.
Yahoo actually.
Yeah. So Google was an organization that kind of pulled together or set up a learning environment, and it was probably one of the best examples of organizations with leadership that valued learning, and the creation of lifelong learners. That was something that I found Google was really, really good at. Kind of created a little monster there though, because they became so good at it that now Google it is now a verb, isn't it? It's an action. Just think about that.
Yeah.
10 years ago, you couldn't say Google it. You had to go and do an internet search. All right. So this speaks to experiential learning. One of the most powerful ways that we learn is from actually doing things. Abstract learning is probably one that is you're called upon to do, but abstract conceptualization is probably the most difficult thing to do. If you think about it, abstract, you could think about doing something like let's say, for instance, if you've never played a musical instrument, you could think about it, read about it, but until you actually do it, you're not going to be able to bring the experiential learning into the process to be able to figure out, okay, this is what they said and this is what I did, and there's a gap between, so something has to happen to bring it about. So that's something that and in a lot of organizations, experiential learning is a very important part of the overall learning process, and in it involves reflection and so on. And that's important. We're going to be looking at that in the other models that we're going to be looking at as well. Experiential learning is critical, and that you can see that here, the reflection, observation, conceptualization, active experimentation, concrete experience, and you keep on going in that cycle. The cycle doesn't run in one level; it kind of spirals outwards. Hopefully, you learn more and you broaden your perception and your capacity from experiential learning. Basically, what I say, you keep on doing something. If you do it the right way, you continue learning and getting better at it over time. That makes sense? But that means you've done everything. You've done something, you've reflected on it, you conceptualized about it, then you experiment and try it again. So you understand what I'm talking about there, right? All right. So this is interesting because I'm kind of wrapping up here. Leadership is not about position. It's not about power. It's not about following somebody. It's not about causing fear, and it's not about giving orders. Everybody's a leader, and leadership can be learned. That's something that this model tried to get us to understand. So this is our citation and stuff for the stuff that I use Google, as you can see, Google Images for a lot of those images that I got. And this is the final thing that I want to leave in. Leadership is not a privilege of the few. You and I can be and should be leaders. So I'd like to put that on as a challenge for you guys to take on. And next class, we'll look at chapter 2. And then the following class, we'll look at chapter 3. And then after that, we'll start to get into the other chapters. Any questions about what we looked at so far?
No, sir.
We good? Everybody tired? I'm gonna stop.
Yes.
Real tired.
What? Yes, so yeah, yes.
I have one
We
question,
understand.
sir.
Yes, go ahead.
With respect to the different follower types, right?
Uh-huh.
You highlighted the different types of followers, but is it possible for a person to overlap in a few of the areas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You can find yourself acting in different areas of any model. Remember, model is going to put definitive differences between one and the other, but life is not that way. We are shades of gray. Let's put it that way. It's not black and white. We're all
All
shades
right. Shades of
All
gray.
right? We're all shades of gray. All right, guys. I know it's 9:15. Whoa, we're well over. But these chapters are kind of long. As you remember what I was saying about when you do your presentations, try to keep it down to an hour. That's because your chapters are much shorter than these. If you go through chapter 2 and 3, they sort of, because this is the first part of the entire book. Chapters 2 and 3 are going to go through the history of leadership and leadership thought, and then the whole model that they've developed. So it's really the meat and stuff, the meat and bones of everything. And you guys are going to be looking at the practice of it. That's the element that you're all going to be getting into. All right. If we're good to go there, I could probably stop the recording for this evening. So I'll probably put up the two videos for today. As two separate little things. I don't think I'll be able to put them up as one. Wouldn't want to put them up as one. Might be better for you to listen to them as two separate elements. All right, so I'm going to stop the recording now.